Hey everybody, it's Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have.
Calvin Ellis ready to rock and give you the real.
So we were surfing and we found this video, the real reason the X-Men franchise forgot about Rogue. Now there's one thing that Calvin is going to attack, and then because it's X-Men, there's going to be a lot for me to have to correct as we go along. Even though it's the movies, how can they be wrong about the movies? Let's see. Ready, set.
Go.
Remember this? It's the finale of 2000's X-Men, and Rogue has been captured by Magneto, who
Arr!
wants to exploit her power to turn all humans
Excellent
into
movies.
mutants. All in all, pretty typical Magneto stuff, and yet the plot, like Eric's machine, is literally revolving around Rogue. So how did we go from that to this silent cameo in Days of Future Past a mere 14 years later? How
Called
could a
Wolverine.
character start off so
Huh?
Said it's called Wolverine.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned it yesterday when they're doing Days of the Future Past and James McAvoy was on Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart showed he was a comic fan. He's like, "You guys are doing the Days of the Future Past. That's a Kitty Pryde story, right? That's like the major Kitty Pryde story. Like you doing that one?" And then and James McAvoy has to say, "Yeah, Kitty's in that story, yes." When turned into a Wolverine story to go into what you're saying. But
Well,
yeah.
unfortunately, the first X-Men movie is an ensemble. That's more of an ensemble than anything else, with some people getting more light than the others. And then it progressively just becomes more of a one-man show, as it goes on. Because you had characters who would have gotten a lot of light in the comics, like Storm or Cyclops, got were really sidelined. They were really sidelined in that even in that first movie at the end of the day, where we really didn't get to see the full nature of those characters.
Hmm. Yeah, so it was tougher for me, even though I think I was okay with the second one. It really sort of played to Wolverine as a reactor. Like Wolverine isn't a character that he can occupy a solo story, but he seems to be better when he's able to interact with the character. So when you have him, like in the first class when he curses out Xavier and Magneto, like that's like him at his best, being able to interact with those characters, not really kind of internal monologue type of thing. But you can also do Western type stuff. But it's kind of bloated as he always gets. So let's keep going. I just played the audio first time. Now you can see a little more
To
of
grow to a
this.
franchise and end up being treated like an embarrassing ex not even 4 movies later. This is a two-pronged answer: the comics and movie politics. Despite occupying a large amount of narrative real estate in comics, throughout the 1990s, Rogue's arc ran out of gas. She stopped being one of the go-to story-driven characters after Chris Claremont was removed from the X-Men in the mid.
No,
No, that's not what happened.
no, no. The 90s, everyone that you see in that cartoon occupied space in the comic books. The Rogue's plot, her backstory, her little bit of backstory wasn't like that little thing of angst that she has was not used. Her story is just her being a fun-loving character that gets misunderstood all the time. That's basically what Chris Claremont did. He didn't deal with curing her. He didn't deal with the ramifications of what she'd done as a criminal. She was just a fun character that got hot over time. It continued, got hotter and younger as time went along. And of course, it's X-Men. People always say that she was the teenager from the beginning, despite what's the name. So this thing, some point you can say, some point later, I think around man, I think because she was still up at the point where Chris Claremont. I don't know what no when who's that guy when Grant Morrison when he changed the direction of the X-Men, that's when you don't see her. But all that point, she's involved in it. That's around 2000. So like she was one of the like the elder like more seasoned X-Men. She went and they had the issue where she fights Sunfire and she like makes short work of them. She's like highly skilled, like reasonable. nothing like the way we met her. So let's cut that crap of saying Chris Claremont left and they threw Rogue out. She got the same amount of backstory. She was always listening. The whole her and Gambit. That was the whole thing through the 90s. They want to just stop with the narratives of trying to. You have a decent idea here. Let's keep moving. Unless you had something else to say about it.
Well, on the other side, I think I don't know if they. I don't. Well, Anna Paquin was at the time. She was still doing True Blood.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
if I remember correctly, she was still doing True Blood, and the schedule was to the point there was no way she could have had a prominent role in this film. But she still came back to film the sequences that she did, even though that they were cut. So that's more of your reasoning at the end of the day. If
Yeah.
you want to look at 2 and 3, you have directorial change, and so you definitely have some stuff that goes that's going to go out the window. But in that particular film, she was still, I believe, she was still doing True Blood at the time, so that would not have been possible for her to have that role, as prominent a role.
Oh, that explains it.
90s. No one other than Claremont really knew what to do with her. She just kind of coasted into the 2000s on nostalgia for the great highs the character had enjoyed under his tenure as a writer. Because sometimes a franchise's need to get bigger with each installment leads to once essential characters with nowhere to go. You can't keep inviting people to a party and expect every guest to be treated equally. But how could this happen to Rogue, a fan-favorite character and integral member of the X-Men team? How could she end up with less screen time than Mystique? To answer that, we have to go back to...
All right. You understand why Mystique gets so much screen time?
Besides the fact she's hot?
The fact that they decided to put her in the X-Men in First Class is just like, it's the total Magneto thing. It's just like, hey, this character is too good. I don't even understand why Brett Ratner cured her. Like, this character cures some of the low level characters. Like, the whole thing is the same reason why Magneto became a good guy. The character is cool as hell, and they found the babelicious person, the both babelicious person to play them, and that's what it is. End the day, end the story. That's the basic thing of someone saying, "Can that?" Like, no, she can't be in the X-Men, the First Class. She's not an X-Men. She's a villain. What if she's Xavier's like pet, like a adopted sister? Yes, perfect. So come on, how how?
To the beginning. The year 2000 was an exciting time to be a Marvel fan. The company had narrowly survived a bankruptcy and was seeing a resurgence because of potential movie adaptations.
All right, cut. Yeah, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. No, it was not a great time to be a Marvel fan. I know. I was a Marvel fan, and there was nothing really coming out. These guys, what was the big? No, because they had already were in bankruptcy, and then Spider-Man did very well. Mm-hmm. Spider-Man did extremely well, and that slowly but surely improved some of their fortunes in terms of how the overall company was looking at the end of the day. But no, it wasn't like they had this they didn't have this old great stuff coming down the pike and everything. If you had to look at what the comics were at that time, comics were okay. It wasn't, that's where you were if you were a Marvel fan, because it wasn't this film industry that you have now for them. So the idea of like, no, X-Men was cool, but how comic films worked at that time. The film came out, people enjoyed it, and then it evaporated. It was almost as if the film never happened, and you went right back to the comics again, and that's where you were getting all of your enjoyment. Comic wise, no. That's just not what was happening. So, if people act like these films were always there. No, they weren't. Okay, you have to talk about the comics, not the films. Not everything is the films. Well, at least it wasn't. I guess that's all there is now.
Yeah, so they're showing Blade, and ultimately Marvel has tried a Blade comic post the movie, and they couldn't last past I guess somewhere either around a 12-issue run, a very short run, let's say, because I don't have the numbers. And it's not, when the X-Men comes out, it's not, I think X-Men was still like successful for Marvel. It's not until Chris Claremont gets on there and people have a really negative reaction when they push him off to put Grant Morrison, and there's a buzz around Grant Morrison. I know there's people that like it, but he kind of went towards the movies and tried to do to give sort of similar look to the movies and the handsome Wolverine and that sort of thing. And I don't know that it was fixed because who's that guy? That's when Jeff Loeb said that, oh, Superman, we had our worlds at war, and the X-Men are fighting a guy with a flamethrower. So there was some buzz around that period, but Joe Kelly was doing, I think, both Superman and X-Men. He did the flamethrower. Is it Joe? Yeah, I think it's Joe Casey. Joe Casey was writing X-Men, the other title that Morrison wasn't writing. He was writing Uncanny. And that's who Jeff Loeb kind of said, that they're fighting the flamethrower, but at the same time, Morrison was on his book. So, it is what it is.
Blade, which proved that not only could Marvel movies be actually entertaining, but they could also be profitable. And now we were getting to an X-Men movie with Patrick Stewart as Professor X. Fan casting was coming to life. The X-Men were coming to the big screen, and it was looking good. No one was thinking about the comics at this point, though, and how they had basically stopped laying creative track for future adaptations. This will come into play later. Claremont, a writer known for his complex depictions of women characters, piloted the X franchise to being the highest-selling comic on the market during his almost 20-year time writing Marvel's Merry Mutants. However, after creative differences, Jim Lee saw him pushed off of the 1992 relaunch.
He saw him pushed off? Or he pushed...
of Objectiveless X-Men #1, the highest-selling comic of all time. The line lost focus and drastically dipped in quality.
All right, pause that. All right, X-Men #1, highest-selling comic book of all time. Okay. And see, but this is where your comic history needs to come in, and why you don't necessarily need to make these comments. Okay, X-Men #1, definitely the highest-selling comic of all time. X-Men #1 is also the highest-selling comic of all time with the most variants.
Yep.
Okay, with the most variants, I believe. What were they all together? Was it 7? 7? Was it 6 or 7 different covers?
It's total of 5.
All right, so you had those 4, and then you had the Magneto cover, so it was just 5.
The Magneto is 4, but then when they did the whole thing as one, so it was like the fold out one had all 4 covers in one. So it was one that was like a magazine type quality paper, and the other 4 were the newsprint versions that had all 4 of those pieces as separate issues. And I think each one of them had a poster in it. The newsprint one had one poster, and then the I guess you could say the Baxter one had all 4 pinups also. So that's what's sort of the difference between them.
Yeah, so you have that. I mean, in contrast, you have Death of Superman, okay, which is the highest selling comic for DC ever, period. Okay, and at that time, highest selling comic book of all time. Has, well, I'm seeing the things I can't count all the reprints on it as well, because it was several reprints on the book. But if you just look at the first run, you had a direct to comic stores version, you had a newsstand version, and then you had this black bag, and then you also had a platinum black bag, but that one was more towards the comic stores. So that one was a lot more exclusive must get. So it's really 3 different covers that you had to go with. And that top sales was something like 5 million with those 3. And the X-Men went over there like, no, the print run was, I mean, that's just a totally different thing at the end of the day. So, in both cases, very high selling books, but, with the variant covers, you want to go for a different book if you want to go high selling at the end of the day. I understand it works. It's nice little stuff, little sizzle at the end of the day when you want to talk X-Men. But there's a ton of covers, at least for that time, for that one particular book. And guys are trying to hunt down all of them.
I would only the thing is that Chris Claremont left, Jim Lee would leave soon after. And basically the X-Men that we see post them, the Scott Lobdell and Fabian Senza, those ones are basically what they base even though the stories are what the Claremont stories, some of the Claremont Byrne, the earliest stories, that sort of thing. But at the same time, the dynamic is what we saw in the Scott Lobdell ones. It's Cyclops and Jean are together. Wolverine as is that sort of thing. So they kept it going, and then they got some Vertigo writers, and they kept it going, and then they had I think Alan Davis kind of finished it up. It's just not the X-Men enjoyed sales for a very long time, even while the comics was crashing. It's not until Chris Claremont came and somehow that was I think I had that first issue, but it was it was just not up to snuff. And that's when it was like the X-Men are in danger. So much in danger where I think they were, in Wizard, they were negotiating who should take over the X-Men. And they had like a pie chart saying who should do it. It was that bad. So it was like, while comics were falling apart, because even Spider-Man had the Clone Saga. So that had,
oh God, no, that's another show. That's another show. Don't bring that up.
Like, X-Men was still going until like close to 2000.
Of course, the movie execs weren't worried about this. They were only concerned with making one good movie. However, the fact that creators like Fabian Nicieza, Scott Lobdell, and Rob Liefeld just didn't have Claremont story sense.
What did they bring in? Rob Liefeld came back for 2 seconds. He did two issues of Wolverine and 2 issues of Cable. Why are they bringing him in there?
Because it's Liefeld. Liefeld created Deadpool, so anything he did must have been good.
Dialogue chops or intimate knowledge of the intricate plotting required to balance the ever-expanding cast is not only a direct reason why the late 90s X-Men books were so bad, but also why Rogue specifically was sidelined. General audiences were pretty unfamiliar with Jack Kirby's perennially beset upon mutants. Their only major
let's play it again. Sorry.
Familiar with audiences were sidelined. General audiences were pretty unfamiliar with Jack Kirby's perennially beset upon
pause that. See? We already did that in the episode.
Hold on. Let me mute myself. I want you to get what.
No, we already did that other episode. We were talking about this. Jack Kirby's X-Men? No, it's not Jack Kirby's X-Men. X-Men are created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Or if you want to go alphabetically by last name, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. Okay, with approval from, you guessed it, Martin Goodman. Okay, Stan Lee is already on record saying that he wanted to come up with some characters. He was feeling lazy. He didn't want to have to create powers or anything of that nature. He was like, how about they just sprout the powers? And that'll be the end of it. And I got a great title for it, The Mutants. Goes to Martin Goodman. And he was like, what? The kids aren't going to understand that. Get that out of here. Get that out of here at the end of the day. Then he comes back, and the best we can get for the title is X-Men. And then with that weak explanation from Professor Xavier for extra power, which never sold, that eventually would become like the X Factor or the Gene. And I don't know what came after that. But okay, that's the origin. That's the origin of those characters. Now I know Kirby said something different, but that was like in '87 when he could get some interview and he said something but no. That's where the characters came from, with Martin Goodman rejecting one title, Stan Lee coming up with the name for the book, name for the title, coming up with that, getting rejected, still stays within the confines of it. And again, as you pointed out, this is another Fantastic Four offshoot. Okay, this is another Fantastic Four offshoot. The same dynamic that we have with the Fantastic Four, except we got teenagers, we got powers, and so on and so forth. But we can we're still playing around with it. Oh, and by the way, anybody who comes with some nonsense about, this was Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. No, it wasn't. Okay, no, it wasn't. That's also the biggest retcon that made absolutely no sense. These guys decided to change the name of Black Panther to Black Leopard because they thought the character was too close to the Black Panther Party. They decided to do that for him. Do they honestly think they modeled them off these two guys? No, it didn't happen. This was more good professor, bad professor. You got the good professor who's come over here. Look, that's the professor who's cool, trying to help you through school and so on and so forth. Then you got the bad professor over there. Okay. The dynamic is pretty clear. I mean, there's other ways to do it, but it was never this Martin Luther King and Malcolm X at the end of the day. And it's not Jack Kirby's X. But you keep putting this nonsense out into the ether, and then you this nonsense over here. It's like, no, come on. And all you got to do is do a little bit of research. All right? Stop patting yourself on the back like somehow you're stroking Kirby, by doing this for him, and do the job right.
Yeah, it's ultimately wrong to say it's Jack Kirby's X-Men because as everything that Cal said, and then there's also the idea that Martin Goodman came to him and said, "Can you give me a group of torches, like a young characters?" And ultimately, that's why we get the students thing, the student dynamic, and as you're saying, of ultimate approval of the characterization. Now, I don't have the actual thing, but ultimately, there were people trying to say that Jack Kirby knew about mutants, and that's a mutation, and Stan Lee didn't. So this
I,
is
I am
something that, well,
I am positive Jack Kirby knew about mutations by 1987.
well, no, I mean, like the idea that Jack Kirby did. The thing is like this, and there's proof that Jack Kirby did know about mutation because he did a mutant story before he was back at Marvel with Joe Simon in one of those Harvey books, like one of those space thing where they have these characters that is like his mind is expanded, and then when Jack Kirby did what did he do? He did Yellow Claw. The first story he does, they meet the not the Yellow Claw finds these mutants that are these mind. It's like and the scene is really cool. The scene is like what's that thing that real basically their mind able to do all this crazy stuff, and they've been used later, I think in the hidden years, but they're able to do all this crazy stuff. So it's like two stories that Kirby did, but Stan has an Atlas mutant story without Kirby with Steve Ditko. He has an Atlas story with Kirby, where this guy has mutant power, and he has another Atlas story with Joe Sinner. So both of them were reading the same material, dealing with the same thing of nuclear energy, the effects of nuclear energy on people, and possibly this mutation happened. That's basically the radioactivity, which led to how most of the Marvel people got their power, and X-Men being the children of the atom. They're both drawing from the same thing, but it's just like, well, he did it with Harvey. He did this other story. It has to be him. And this is like, well, Stan has some story. And I argue with someone like, Stan has a couple of mutant stories too before that. And he's like, well, and it's just like, how do we know? Why do we have to give Kirby all of it? Why do we have to say that the only person that knew about mutants is Kirby? And the same with Thor. How only person that knew about the Norse mythology is Kirby. Well, see, he did the New Gods. See no, maybe later, yeah, maybe all of the tales of Asgard is that. But Stanley been writing about the tree that's in the Norse myths forever. Like it showed up in the Just Imagine in the Green Lantern story.
Yeah,
That's where
following him all the way to DC.
so it's like it's something that it's these are like let's not act like the only person that read books and threw it into the stuff they were doing is Kirby. It's just like come on, it's just you're going too far. And ultimately that's the thing. If we have to give credit where credit's due, why do we have to throw out Martin Goodman
Well,
as the guy?
you gotta stop being like an internet head, because it usually it's that, oh, you could come and say, oh, look, see, Kirby did this stuff with mutants, so Kirby was the guy behind the mutants. But then if you come to me and say, oh, but look at these stories over here, where Stan did stories about mutants too, then the response should be, oh, I didn't know that. So okay, I didn't realize that. No, I just dig even deeper. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. You're trying to still take it away from Kirby. This time, the resistance to anything reasonable and the embrace of everything ignorant when it comes to the stuff, just ridiculous.
Well, that's the other thing, and also looking at it is only thing that matters as far as the X-Men, because the X-Men is a huge success for Marvel, is the creation of it, right? And that trying to say that the creation of it is the only thing isn't a true assessment of the X-Men, because they just showed you all these, you know, we have all these guys. We have half of these guys are in the original book. looking, some of them looking nothing like the way they did, but Magneto looks the same. Got Cyclops, Iceman, Archangel, and Jean, and then all these other guys that are in here that people would know as the X-Men. The guy that centers the movie is Wolverine, not a creation of Jack Kirby. So when you go to the X-Men, they are truly the comic version of success, especially having Wolverine in there, where you have a comic that Stan Lee pulled Kirby off of, saying this thing ain't selling. We need you on other stuff. and next thing was a boy.
The book was in reprints.
Yep.
The book was in reprints later on, and this was a book this is a book effectively that was canceled. Yeah, effectively it was canceled. Then they get the reboot with Giant Size X-Men, and they pick up the numbering with what? Where did the number, was it 94?
94, yeah.
They pick up the numbering with 94. But the whole idea, these guys, I mean, literally, this is a team or a comic that's created. It doesn't really hit its stride until like almost 10 years later.
Yep, it doesn't. It's not, even when the big success, the numbers weren't there yet. It's not until they get the buzz after, Byrne and Claremont are doing their things, but they get the big numbers like some point, like when they're like, I think it's after they start to pick up when after Byrne's gone, and then it really goes nuts when Paul Smith is on there. But it was going up while Dave Cockrum was on there. So it's one of those things where, and so then since we're going this far into it, we have to do one last thing about, we can possibly come back to this one here, but let's see.
With Jack Kirby's perennially beset
I had to play again. No, it hurt. One of the things to point out how Jack Kirby created everything is saying that, well, to prove that he wrote these things, he wrote the descriptions in the margins. So we have X-Men #1. There ain't no description in the margins. Does that mean he didn't do anything?
Yes.
That's
exactly what that means if we go by what you people are saying. So there you have the proof. That's the art.
Issue 1. Here's another page from it. Nothing. Not a race. Not, what's this? This is issue 4. Let's see, they show, maybe we have something on here. This is the best. This is even better. This is, oh man. Let me stop this. They're going to make me sign it. But if you can see it here, this is Stan Lee's handwriting. He's coming up with names for the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And he got Magneto and Quicksilver and Mastermind. And then he goes through all of the millions of names for the Scarlet Witch, the Witch, the Witch Woman, Miss Witch, Lady Witch, Evil Eye, Miss Witch, Jinx. He's got Miss Witch circled a couple of Miss Mystic. He got Jax. Some of these are hard to read, but then he puts an underline under Scarlet Witch. So it's like this is a part of the creation of here. Here's a later issue. Maybe this one has. Maybe it can. Even the later issue. No, nothing from Kirby yet on the margins. And I'm not saying, hey, there's no plotting thing in here, but it's just like we can disprove some of this other stuff too. Let's just say that they were collaborators and call it a day.
No, you can't do that. You got to go deeper. You got to say, no, what happened was that Stan waited up late one night, broke into Kirby's place, stole his art, erased all the margins, okay, put his handwriting on there, spilled a little coffee to make it look legitimate too. Okay.
The old coffee on the original artwork.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at right now. All right. Oh, just because he wrote there doesn't mean he had anything to do with it. Stan Lee, he didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I mean the writing on the artwork kind of comes later, like not too much later, but I mean it's like and the thing is a lot of those guys weren't coming in to to talk things over in the plot and see what needed to be changed, anything like that. So this big deal is saying here's the proof that, and that's Jack Kirby's proof of writing it. So I don't know. The hard part is that we were mowing a lawn and then we had this guy who does the show with me, Cal, already explained why Rogue isn't in there. So
Their
is
only
there
major
anything else
exposure
in
outside
this?
the comic book world
No, not really. We're done.
was X-Men the animated series. So the producers were smart to have a character as an entry point. Think Neo in the Matrix.
Okay, that's enough, guy.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So what did we learn? Rogue wasn't in the movie because she was doing True Blood, which ended about the same. True Blood ended in 2014, the same year that this movie came out, and she was filming. She had 10 episodes to film. Probably could, I mean, that's 10 episodes on a TV show. That's at least, that might take you up the better part of the, like half a year, or at least 4 good months, and depending on when they were filming. Now, so, but she still came out to film some scenes, that singer asked, her to do. Those didn't make it to the final cut for reasons that were already established, and that's why she wasn't in the movie.
All right. Spin a rack.
Out.